Good morning, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. Today, we're going to be covering off the basic functions of Microsoft Teams. This is very much a how-to training session, so please feel free to ask questions throughout the webinar, which we will reply back on chat, and also video link at the end of the presentation. For those of you that aren't currently using Teams and may not be licensed for it, it's worth noting that Microsoft are offering a 6-month free trial of Teams. This is to cover the current COVID-19 crisis. So if this is something you're interested, please make contact with us after the event and we can assist you with setting this up. Today's agenda is a quick introduction to Enhance. We'll keep this very brief. We'll then be moving on to the basic functionality of Teams, both the chat and calling functionality. Then moving on to the creation of teams and channels and understanding the value that these add. This is kind of the core part of Microsoft Teams. That we'll then be understanding how to create Teams meetings and join those. Moving on, we'll be learning around the mobile application and web application that Microsoft offer for Microsoft Teams. We'll then be covering off the creation and use of files within a team. This is the kind of collaborative working element of Teams. We'll then be understanding the use of applications within Teams. So Microsoft support external applications within the Teams product. And finally, we'll be covering off Teams for Education. This has distinct differences from the standard Teams experience to build a suitable solution for educators. So Enhanced are a IT solutions provider. We cover off a number of different areas, including managed services, cloud, security, networking, training, and compute and storage, alongside our business solutions division. So today we're going to be covering off cloud and training with Microsoft Teams. If you're looking for more structured training moving forward, we offer adoption training and customized packages around the Microsoft stack. Today's webinar will be covered off by myself and my colleague Jeff. Both of us are within the infrastructure department at Enhanced, so if you have any further questions around Teams or future projects, then feel free to get in contact with either of us moving forward. So in our first section today, we're going to be covering off the basic functionality within Teams, so chat and calling functionality, whether that be voice or video, and we'll be moving on to more advanced sections further on. For those of you that have been using Skype for Business in its various iterations, the main function of that product was around chat, as well as kind of presence details. That functionality is replicated within Teams and can be done on a one-to-one basis and by having group chats as well. To start a new chat, if we go to the search menu at the top, to the left-hand side of that is the chat button, at which point we can type in the contact that we wish to speak to. If it's a single user, we just type in their name and begin to chat in the window below. If we're looking to create a chat for multiple users, we can use the drop-down menu. We can then type in the group name that we want to call this group chat, type that detail in there, and then we can send this to multiple recipients. In this case, we are sending that to Jeff and Karim. And we can then begin our chat, and that will open the group chat.
To add a little bit of flavour when you're using Teams, Microsoft have included a GIF option. So basically you can use GIFs from a library by basically just clicking GIF from the message window. It will bring up the library. You can choose one, search for one, and send that GIF within your chat. You can also use an application called Giphy to create your own GIFs as well. One really quick way of getting people's attention in Teams and pushing specific content out to specific people is to use the at mentions function. So when you're within a team, you can literally use the at sign and use team or at channel or at name, and it will bring up everyone within that team, everyone within that channel or specific person that you can then send content to, send messages to, so that they are then flagged within their team site.
Making calls in Microsoft Teams is very easy. The quickest way is to go to the calling section on the left-hand side. There you'll have your recent contacts, your history, your voicemail. You can also search for contacts in the main search tab and call from there. If you're wanting to make external calls with Microsoft Teams, you can use Teams calling packages through Microsoft or through a third party.
So to make a call within Teams, either an audio call or a video call, if you go to the chat section of the team, and within there, pick one of the icons, and you can essentially call any member of your organization from those buttons. They won't appear in any team conversation. You don't have to host a team meeting to do this. These are direct calls, and you can have up to 50 people on the same video call. So to answer a call when you're in Teams, just as easy as accepting either the audio or the video call when it comes in, or you can decline this as well. So if you see the top right-hand side of the screen, then a call comes in, and basically you can hit whichever icon you like to accept it or decline it. So a fairly new feature within Teams is the ability when you're on a video call to blur your background, and quite easy to do. Essentially what you need to do is run your mouse over the Teams meeting to enable the menu. Click on the three dots and click on blur my background, and that will blur your background.
In this section, we're going to be covering off the creation and joining of Teams meetings. Today, we will also be covering briefly Microsoft Teams live events, which is its solution you're currently seeing for one-to-many presentations on a more formal basis. Scheduling a meeting in Teams is super easy. If you click into the calendar section in Teams, create new meeting, enter your title for the meeting, just as you would do in Outlook. Then add your relevant attendees for this particular meeting, whether that's internal or external. Choose a date and time, and then send your location. So it'll auto populate with any rooms that you have set up within Outlook and Exchange. Fill in your description as you would do normally, and then finally send the calendar invite.
Another way to schedule a Teams meeting is to do it directly from Outlook. So if you opened your calendar in Outlook, and essentially you can then just go to create a new Teams meeting in the location that you need and the time slot that you need. Fill in the details exactly as you would do normally for any other meeting, and complete the invite and send it off. The links to the meeting are already contained within that email.
Joining a Teams meeting is relatively easy. This can be completed from both within the Teams application and from Outlook. First of all, we'll go through the Teams application, where we go into our calendar. We then find the meeting, select that, and then join. Moving on to Microsoft Outlook. If we go into the Outlook application and then into the calendar there, we can find that same Teams meeting, open the calendar invite, scroll down, click the Join Microsoft Teams meeting button, open that in Microsoft Teams, and that brings you to the same joining screen as we just saw a minute ago. Teams supports external dial-in for meetings. This is an additional license for this particular functionality, and to access your dial-in number, if you open at the meeting, and below the joint Microsoft Teams meeting is your dial-in instructions. Over the next couple of slides, I'm going to be covering off Microsoft Teams live events. These are for larger hosted events, typically webinars where you need multiple presenters, and looking at attendee counts all the way up to 10,000. To create a live event, if you go into the calendar within Teams, there's a drop-down menu next to new meeting. You can create a new live event from there. From here, you can create a title for that particular event. This is more for internal use. We can then choose our roles for our presenters and producers. So there are split roles for this. So presenters showing content and producers managing the content of all the presenters. We can then choose the type of audience that we're looking at, whether that's internal or external, and then the functionality we want, for instance, recordings carried out after the event and the Q&A functionality that you're using today. Once that event is created, that will auto generate an attendee link. Again, this can be sent out to external contacts. For instance, yourselves, you've accessed this meeting via one of these links. Running a Microsoft Teams live event is very different from a Teams meeting. As mentioned in the previous slide, there are two roles, producer and presenter. So if I join the live event as a producer now, you'll see the screen is very different to that of the Teams meeting. So on the screen, we have the queue and the live event windows and our content in the below. So if I open up our presentation, and drop back into the Teams live event, then you'll see that content being shown at the bottom. So any presenter's content that they're sharing will be in this window below, and you can then put that into the queue ready to push out to the live event. You can have up to 2 screens showing within the window, so typically your presentation and a webcam footage. Then we can go into our settings for audio. So each person can set up their microphone source. It's worth noting that Microsoft doesn't support internal audio to be presented at the moment. There is a way around that. So if you use a third-party product to route your audio internally, such as this one, which is the cable output virtual cable, that will then push out my audio from, say, a presentation out through the microphone input. We can then start that live event, and that will then push that out to our audience. I'm just going to go over the Q&A section as well. So if we go up to the top here, go into Q&A. So as a producer or presenter, we can present out to the audience particular notifications. We can answer questions in the live or the news section, which is left of this published. Any questions coming in from the audience will come in here. We can then do either a private reply, or we can then push that private reply out publicly if it's a question that's relevant to the whole audience. In the following section, we're going to be covering off the core functionality of Teams, and that is creating teams and channels. This is the building block that all of the other functions of Teams kind of builds upon, especially when you're looking at collaborative working.
Create a team, basically choose the teams icon on the left hand side, go to join or create a team, build it from scratch and make it private, and then you can add team members in, give your team a name, and then hit the create button. When you've hit the create button, then it allows you to then add in private users into that team so they can participate in the team, add the names in, and at that point you can add permissions as well, so what they can actually do within the team. And once you've done that and you close it, then the team's ready to use. Within a team, you can add channels. They're basically folders off of the main team. So click on the team that you want to add and hit the dots, and then add a channel. Give that channel a name, just like naming a subfolder, and you can give it a description. Click add. That will add the channel to the team, and then you can use that team. So a conversation, for instance, within that team, that channel will only appear in that channel and not the full team.
Within Teams, Microsoft offers the option to allow third parties to access a team. This needs to be enabled by your IT team. To complete this, if we want to add a external contact to an existing team, if we go to the team that we want them to be added to, click the options section and then click add a member. We can then type in that member's third-party email address, and that will then add them as a guest, as you can clearly see there. Also, if you're added to another company's team as a third party, to access that, if we click on the company name of ourselves, choose the third party company name, and that will then provide us access to that third party team site. This is useful if you've got external contractors or you're working on content with a third party. Over the next couple of slides, we're going to be covering off both the mobile application and the native web application for Teams. Alongside the desktop applications for both Windows and Mac, Microsoft offer native mobile applications for both iOS and Android. These applications allow you to access all the key functionality, whether that be chat, voice calling, or your teams and channels and the file data within those. It's worth noting that that file data can now be opened in the new Office application, which is a single application to access both Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. For those of you that may be running on a remote desktop solution such as RDS or Citrix, it's worth noting that Microsoft also offer a native web application for Teams. To access this, you'll need to log into the Office 365 website, and then you'll have access to your suite of desktop or web applications. If you click into Teams, you will get a view similar to what is on the screen at the moment, and as you can see, it is fairly fully featured and provides you the same look and feel as the desktop application. So as you can see, I've added in a third-party application, so we were looking at forms there. I can still access all my chats in addition to making any video or audio calls. In this section, we're going to be covering off the creation of documents, being able to move documents within Teams, how that sits upon SharePoint, and the use of version history and collaborative document working. Microsoft are looking for users to utilize Teams for most of their day-to-day activity. Therefore, the ability to create documents is very important. To do this, you need to then go into your team channel. You can then select the Files tab. From there, we can then click New from the toolbar and then choose to create a new folder, document, whatever is required. At this point, we can then save that into the Teams channel. This will then load up the native Teams application for that particular file type. And at this point, we could also look to open that in the desktop application if preferred. Moving a document within Teams is a simple operation. If we go into the file section that we want to locate the file within, we can then select the document via the three dots, choose to move that file, which will then bring up a browser tab, and then we can select the location that we want to move that in. It's worth noting that all these files sit within SharePoint, and you can do these operations within SharePoint by going into the menu option and then going open in SharePoint.
So to share content when you're in a Teams meeting, essentially all you need to do is run your mouse over the meeting, which will bring up the menu. click the share button, and that will bring up a number of options on what you can actually share. So you can share your entire desktop, you can share a particular application window, you can share a particular PowerPoint presentation, or also a nice little feature within Teams is the whiteboard application. So you can share a whiteboard and actually do notes, etc. within the meeting.
So being able to collaborate on a document has been in place for a number of years now, mainly facilitated through the SharePoint backend that the file section of Teams is based upon. So if you open a document within Teams, that will open the document that's based in SharePoint. That will then let other users also access that document at the same time. So I'm currently making changes to this document, changing the font color. My colleague Jeff has now jumped in and he has pasted additional text. You can see that the area that he's working on has been highlighted in red. If we jump to another page, we can also get back to anyone that's collaborating by clicking on their image, and that will take them back to the page that they are currently working on.
One area of Teams that does confuse people is the file and sort of document library part of Teams. So Teams is built on SharePoint. To get information on your file, your document, your PowerPoint presentation, etc., and the version history, then this is actually done through SharePoint. So if you open the required team channel and select the file that you need, and then click on the dots, you can opt to open that document in SharePoint. So click on the file and then click on file history, and this will give you all the number of times that that file has been saved and all the different versions of it from the drop-down menu. And you can restore to a specific version as well.
Microsoft has also simplified version history access by enabling it within the Office application. If we open the selected team channel, select the file, and then open that within the desktop application. Once open, we can then click the file in the Office ribbon. From there, we can then click View and Restore Previous Versions. And at that point, we can see our version history and open the documents and restore them within the application itself. Microsoft Teams is a constantly evolving platform, and they also open up their product to third-party application providers. In the next section, we're going to be covering off some of the native Microsoft applications that are utilized within Microsoft Teams, which include Planner and Forms.
So Planner in Teams is a really useful function which allows you to add tasks for team members and when they have to do them. So to do this, essentially in Teams, if you click, go to the plus and choose Planner, and then create a new plan and give it a name. That will essentially create a new plan board for within that team. And then you can add tasks to that plan board and assign those tasks to individuals. And when that task is due, who it's assigned to, and here we're creating multiple tasks, assigning them to different people. And within the charts, you can see the current status of those tasks, who they're assigned to. And here within the schedule view, again, which tasks are to do, which are completed. You can click on each individual task as well. So within Teams, you can create polls within a team. So questions that can be multiple choice or questions that require answers. So you can do quick polls within your organization. And to do that, to create a poll, essentially go to the Teams channel that you want to create the poll in. And then go to the Ads tab, the plus, and choose Forms, and create a form with a new name. Save that. And then you can add either multiple choice questions or questions that require an answer, and fully edit what the options are that people need to choose. So this one essentially requires some text to be typed in. You can then preview your poll and edit it and change it as required.
As we have a number of attendees from the education sector, we've added a specific section today around Microsoft Teams for Education. For those running the education version of Teams, there's a slightly different look to the product, so it's been kind of more geared around a simplified look for both educators and for students. So there's an option for your more traditional view, which we can see on the right hand side, and then on the left hand side is the grid view. Microsoft's worked very closely with MIS software providers such as Sims to let you import that data into Teams. The main reason for this is to auto-populate Teams based on classes. So your lecturer or teacher and all the students that sit within that will sit within their own teams. This will auto-populate for all classes, but within the last couple of months, Microsoft have disabled all of those teams, and it needs to be enabled on a per class basis once a teacher is happy to push that out to their class. Microsoft have worked closely with teachers around the creation of the Onenote class notebook. So this is a development of the existing Onenote product you may be using day to day. So great for handouts, collaboration spaces, and teachers can have their own individual ones for pushing out class content, as well as students having it for individual note taking. One of the major differences with Microsoft Teams for Education is assignments. We'll just go through the windows that I've highlighted on the screen. So the left one is the creation of a new assignment. So we can detail titles, what the document type is that we're going to be submitting, submission dates. So we can submit a variety of documents, including all the native Microsoft documents, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. Once submitted, then all the students will be able to turn that in digitally. For commenting, we can comment on a per document basis, shown in the top right hand corner, or within the document itself we can comment and highlight different sections of the document, so marking individual elements within that. So in addition to submitting documents, we can also set out quizzes and move the turning process entirely digitally, get rid of paper in its entirety. A key question that I get asked around Teams and use in education is around safeguarding and setting out policies around chat, etc. So within the product itself, they do detail individual policies for the different elements. For instance, chat, we can turn off chat for students one-to-one, but leave that in place for the staffing team, or enable chat within class teams so that it can be monitored by staff within an individual class.